What's up, everybody? The CFL season is here, so that means another season preview is coming at you. And we're talking Toronto Argonauts today. Notice how I said the CFL season is here, but I guess the Argonauts season isn't quite here yet. They're part of the third of the league that is on bye on week one. Nevertheless, I am joined by Argonauts color analyst and host of the X's and Argos podcast, Ben Grant. What's up, Ben? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be on talking some CFL football with you.
And I was just saying, we're getting ramped up here. I mean, I know the Argos got a week off, but season starts in, I guess, what, almost 48 hours from the time of this recording on Tuesday. So, but let's get into it. Offense or defense? Honestly, I'll leave it up to you, Ben. Where would you like to start today?
I'm an offensive guy, so why don't we start with offense?
Okay, cool. Let's do it. I feel like just in general, the Argonauts are getting slept on a little bit. I've been seeing some predictions online and just hearing people talk. I personally, from my point of view, I feel like they're getting slept on a little bit. Maybe I'm underestimating the loss of Ryan Dinwiddie and what it's going to mean to the team and the offense specifically. But I would love to hear your thoughts on that side of the ball and where you think things are standing heading into the 2026 season because there's been some changes. You got an overhauled running back room, a revamped offensive line as well. So, and then obviously you got the healthy Chad Kelly and Coxie coming back. So, just give me the takes on the offense.
Yeah, and I think part of the people's reluctance to award the Argos a better projected record than last year is that there are some new things, right? It's unknown. You don't know what it's going to be like with a new play caller and Mike Miller, head coach, now a new head coach as well, right? Like a new staff generally. The team wasn't very good last year with only 5 wins, so I get why people are maybe, as you said, sleeping on the Argos a little bit, but I like what this team has done. There are some questions we don't have answers to. We have to see what the staff is like. I think Mike Miller's done a great job so far. I was extremely impressed with his off season, I guess, and the training camp and leading up to the two preseason games. I thought what I was looking for was how smooth an operation it was for a guy that, even with all his years coaching, was a first time head coach,
Right.
and it couldn't have been more smooth. It was clockwork, and to me that speaks to a well disciplined, a well organized team, and that doesn't mean you're going to see success on the field, but it's not a bad thing either. So I think they're off to a good start there, but we have to wait and see. And then the other thing, we maybe talk about this a little bit later too, but the fact that they're not going to be home at BMO Field for a long time might be another reason that people are sleepy on the Argos. But let's talk about this offense. So the offense last year really wasn't the problem. They were fairly efficient, and I think they got better this season. I know you're not technically adding him on paper, but you are adding Chad Kelly. I thought Chad Kelly looked pretty good in his one preseason game in Hamilton. I thought he looked really good last year. I thought at the end of last season, watching him at practice, I thought he was moving around well. I really felt like he was going to come back in the fall. I felt like he was healthy enough, and I think ultimately management, the coaching staff, made the right decision to sit him because the season that wasn't a team last year that was really going anywhere, and
Right.
that extra time I think helped just for his, not necessarily physically, although I'm sure there was that too, but for his own confidence and his own the mental side of recovering from an injury like that. So he's being added to this team, and he remember the last time he played a full season was the MOP. So he's a pretty good quarterback. And then adding some of those offensive line pieces, Dakota Shepley, an outstanding offensive lineman. He's probably going to play the right guard spot. And just today to bring in Kendall Randolph, signed from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who's the Blue Bombers, they brought in Jarrell Broxton this offseason, made him the highest paid tackle in the league, highest paid American offensive lineman in the league. And so I think that's more why Randolph was released than his play. He's a
Right.
good tackle, and I think he immediately becomes Toronto's best tackle, probably. Although Desmond Bland might have something to say about that. He had a really good preseason. So I think when you look at that offensive line, it's very good. I think there may be one question mark in Bland because he's new,
Hmm.
but he's looked really good. The receiving corps, it's guys who are familiar with Demonte Coxie, Makai Polk, guys that Chad Kelly has a rapport with. Ungerer, he loves as an outlet. Kevin Mittal, one
Yeah.
of the best receivers in the league last year, I thought. And so Jake Herzlow is probably the other spot, and that was a guy that had 9 touchdowns in 9 straight games or something absurd like that. And we'll see what we get for the running back room. There's some reasons to be excited there. Quaylon Jones, a big back at 240, can really pound it up the middle. And Sam Hicks, a nice change of pace back, who was working all sorts of magic this preseason with some explosive plays. I like that Thunder Lightning combo, and maybe Isaiah Smith, the draft pick, filling that out in the backfield. So this offense, and I didn't even address Jack Cassar, who's suddenly a
Yeah.
fullback now, which is exciting, and Sebastian Parcelidis there as well. One of my favorite players from this year's draft. So it's an exciting offensive room. I think this team is going to put up points.
Yeah, I wrote down regarding the running backs, I wrote down Thunder and Lightning, the exact same thing as you just said between Jones and Hicks. And when you got that offensive line in front of them, you can do some fun things. I actually pulled these numbers on Randolph today because they signed him. I mean, one of the bigger questions about this offense before, I don't know, 3 hours ago before Kendall Randolph signed was, that right tackle spot. And was Brandon Kemp going to be the guy there? I mean, I guess he was going to be the guy there. Um, but Randolph, ninth among tackles last season in pressure rate allowed. That put him uh, that put him over Kemp. When you compare him to Kemp, uh, Kemp allowed three more pressures than Randolph last season on nearly 300 less pass block snaps.
Yeah.
So that just shows you, like to what you mentioned. I honestly, it was kind of shocking that the Bombers went and got Broxton. I mean, there's a clear reason why. Broxton's one of the best pass protectors and overall linemen in the league. But like you said, it wasn't because of Randolph's play. He is one of the better linemen in the league. And there was no clear of among the cuts where there's a big hole on a team and where, the most talented player available could slot right in. You mentioned the other Canadians in the middle. It's a big athletic group between
Yeah.
Ryan Hunter, who's kicking inside now, Shepley, who's coming from the NFL, like you mentioned, and Peter Nicastro. Like those are some of the more athletic linemen that have come out of the CFL drafts over the past handful of years. And I've heard good things about Desmond Bland. So and you're saying he had a good camp. So I guess we'll see what we get out of him as well.
Yeah, Bland. I wasn't expecting him to be as good as he looked. When the Argos first signed him, I watched a lot of film on him,
He was like a
and
guard, wasn't he? Wasn't he
yeah,
playing
and
some?
and
Yeah.
and a lot of CFL tackles were guards, but he looked like a guard that was only going to be a guard. Like
Mm.
that's what I saw when I watched his film, and so I knew they were going to try and make him a tackle because that's what you do with American linemen in the CFL, unless you're the BC Lions. Everyone else seems to make all their Americans tackles. And so I was very skeptical. In my initial depth chart going way back to February, I think I had him as my third string left tackle just because I had trouble projecting him as a tackle.
Right.
But then watching him play, watch back, you go back to that first preseason game against Hamilton and watch how he completely shuts out Hamilton's D line. Everyone he was up against, they don't get anywhere close to the quarterback. He completely controlled that position, and I wasn't expecting to see that. And that's pretty much what it was in the double blue game. That's what it was every day at camp. And so he's been a very pleasant surprise. And they only really need him to hit because I think we know what we've got in Randolph, like you said. And then you look at those three interior guys; they're all either former All Stars or former Offensive Lineman of the Year in Ryan Hunter, who's
Yeah.
much more comfortable at that guard spot. Shepley, just coming back from the NFL. Hunter, of course, was in the NFL too. And all three of them have that sort of nasty style of play that I love from my interior. Guys that you hate lining up against on the other side, guys that are going to go out and do the dirty work and make you remember that you played them the next day.
And I know it's not the sexiest thing to talk about the offensive line, but this is where I feel like I think this is where I'm a bit more higher on the group is because of this unit up front, especially now that Randolph's in. Like it was a turnstile, not a bit of a turnstile. It was a turnstile last season between injuries. I mean, Hunter is now back and fully healthy after getting hit by a car.
Yeah.
So, I just like that was the epitome of everything that was going wrong for the Toronto Argonauts season in 2025. Honestly, like they just got hurt all over the field. So seeing this much improved offensive line should help in the run game as well because they had really no semblance of a run game when until late last year when Spencer Brown came in, I was a bit shocked, honestly, that they let Spencer Brown go just because of his physical bashing style. But I guess they like what Jones is going to bring in that aspect. And then just to touch more on the injury part, like now you got Devontae Coxie, who's fully back healthy, and Makai Polk. Seeing those two work the weak side of the field with Chad Kelly, what have you seen from those guys where, those are going to be the stars of the show? I think Devontae Coxie is one of the best receivers in the CFL. I think he gets slept on a little bit, at least when it comes to deep down the field. He's one of his average depth of target is towards the top of the league, and he's pretty efficient at catching those balls too. So, I mean, this was a team that passed the ball 77% of the time last year,
Yeah.
partly because they were down a lot, and like we mentioned, they didn't have much of a run game. But where do you think this pass game is going to look in 2026?
Yeah, and like it helps to when you have a good run game, that helps your passing game too.
Mm,
And that was the problem last year that they couldn't run. Like Nick Arbuckle was their leading rusher through like
yeah.
mid-August, which is a terrible sign. And again, nothing against Nick. I love Nick, and I think he is the best second string quarterback in the league. But that said, he shouldn't be your leading rusher. That's not his game. That's not his strong point. But I think, part of that was teams were creeping up a little bit. They weren't scared of the deep ball last year. Again, it's partly due to injuries. It's partly due to the tackle play that Toronto
Yeah.
was getting, where there was no time to set up and load up for a deep shot. And Coxie was in and out of the lineup. Chad Kelly has a really good rapport with both Coxie and Polk. You saw them connect when Toronto was on their way to that East Final game
Yep.
when Chad got hurt. But add a run game to that. And these guys are all good run blockers that they've got in place now. You add a run game to that, and I think that's going to help to have Chad Kelly there too, because he's also an athletic quarterback. We saw him in his limited action in Hamilton break off. It was like a 24-yard
That
run
was
or something like
encouraging.
that.
That was
Yeah,
encouraging.
and that's something that Nick couldn't bring for the team last year. And it just one more thing for backers to have to keep an eye on that's going to hold them there a little bit, just that split second longer, because you knew when you see an immobile quarterback on a play fake, you don't have to wait and see. You can just go after the back.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's Chad, you've got to wait and make sure he's not keeping the ball. And so that's going to help the run game. It's also going to help the pass game because there's that uncertainty. So I think that familiarity we talked about with Coxie, with Polk, the improved pass protection, the fact that Chad can run, I think it's automatically going to improve all areas of the offense. And when they need a little bit more protection, this is a team that didn't have a fullback on their roster for
Yep.
most of last season, which again, that's Dinwiddie's style. Like he's never really had a fullback in Toronto. Like he had them on the roster, but didn't use them. And then got to the point last year where he didn't even bother having them on the roster. And again, I actually have respect for that style of play.
Yeah.
But when you're looking to bolster your pass protection, buy your quarterback a bit more time, and potentially create some really nice lead blocks in the run game, having a guy like Kassar, a guy like Parcelidis, I think those are only going to help your offense.
I guess we'll see. It's a high variance outcome. I feel like how this offense could be just because, there's so much moving parts, even from Miller. Like we haven't really touched a lot on what, how he's going to call and what that's going to look like. That's just another thing to throw into the mix. And then obviously Chad Kelly getting more comfortable, Hunter's coming back. But just to kind of round out the wide receivers here, like even I'm excited to see what Jake Herslow can offer in a less reduced role. You know what I mean? With less attention towards him. Like Jake Herslow was getting number one receiver attention last year, and he was still jumping over dudes and catching a bunch of touchdowns and going up and getting balls. And then obviously, like you mentioned, you got Unger, who's a great check down option on the outside, usually always available. And then Matal, who you can do a lot with. Great blocker as well. And, he's more of that check down sort of inside slant in sort of guy over the middle as well. So it's a great mix. And I think and then, like you mentioned, if they can get a run game and with that Thunder and Lightning, and then if Chad can be Chad and be dynamic and be, the back to the form where he was the 2023 MOP, he was second in pass yards per game in the 8 games he played in 2024. I mean, it's an offense that could do some damage.
Yeah, Chad wins football games. I think his win percentage is something absurd,
Uh,
like 800 or
he's
something.
25-4 as a starter.
Yeah, like yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's just about right for the math. Like that is an absurd win-loss record. And remember, he was kind of introduced to us all in that Grey Cup game where in 2022 he came in for an injured McLeod Bethel Thompson and brought the team from behind to win that Grey Cup. So he's done nothing but win since getting to Toronto. But yeah, it's been a while though. So that's like again, it's one of those questions. Like, is Chad going to be old Chad? Is Mike Miller able to be a head coach and a offensive play caller? Is the team going to manage being on the road as long as they are to start the season? There are a lot of questions. So I'm very high on the possibilities. I think the ceiling is extremely high,
Yes. Yeah.
but I get why people are reserved.
Yeah. You know what? That's a fair take. All right, well, let's move on to the defense now, where uh, the Argonauts, I've been writing about it. They kind of have this feeling to me where it's like getting the band back together to some degree. It's like same new vibe, but same faces, if that makes sense. Offensively, it's just getting healthy, right? Like we talked about with Coxie, Hunter, Chad Kelly. On the defense, they just went and brought guys back. You know, if you can't if you won with them in the past, let's just go get them back, right? I mean, when you look at the guys they've brought in, Ralph Hawley was a part of those winning teams. Dwayne Hendricks, Adarius Pickett, Robert Priester, Deshaun Amos, like they really went and got everybody back. And when I'm looking at this unit, I want to start up front if you don't mind, because I think this is going to be a disruptive unit, front seven wise at least. And I think Ralph Hawley is fantastic. I think Dwayne Hendricks has had good seasons before and is a veteran. You're going to have to help me on the pronunciation of Toy
So Soani Toia.
Toya. He's
Toia.
great.
Yeah,
Is he
he's
not great?
excellent. He's
I
been such a surprise. Like he's so much fun to watch. He's so fast and it's more explosive burst, I guess, than like, 100-meter dash speed. But the way he explodes off the ball, the quickness of his hands, the quickness of his feet, it's really impressive. I think he might start. That's the thing. Like I love Hendricks. I think Hendricks is an amazing player. I was really excited to see the team bring him back. Toya has done everything that was asked of him and more. And so just another guy that has a chance to make a mark on this defensive line.
You throw in Andrew Chatfield, who I personally really like. He had a breakout season in 2025, fifth in pressures and in pressure rate, eighth in sacks, second in tackles amongst defensive linemen. And then you got your Canadians on the other side in Kongbo, who's shown some flashes as well. Like, I think this is going to be a disruptive front. And then when you add in Cameron Judge, Darius Pickett, and even Isaac Darkangelo, who had some flashes last year in his playing time, I think that this is a unit that is going to be able to rush the passer and is going to be able to stop the run. So I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm really excited for what this front seven can do, along with new defensive coordinator Greg Quick and how he is going to utilize them.
Yeah, and Greg Quick's an exciting addition
Right.
to the staff too. I love what he was doing with the linebackers in Montreal. Montreal's like think about their linebackers over the last few years, and the linebacker play they've got. I know a lot of his player base. They've had great players. Like it's not like Therese Beverette and Zank. You're going to forget how to play football
Right.
without Quick. Like yes, they're awesome, but he had that group really well coached, and I think he's been there, done that before, and he's been around the league. I think he's going to love working with this group. Let's talk about that D line. So Ralph Hawley, the first guy you mentioned, I think he has the chance to be one of the best defensive players in the CFL this year.
So
Um,
disruptive.
yeah, he commands double teams, and that only helps your linebacker level when you have to dedicate two bodies to blocking one. It frees guys up. It prevents centers from being able to climb to the next level. It allows for one-on-one situations for your edge rushers and for your three tech. So I think Hawley, he may not end up leading the CFL in sacks, but his play grades are going to be excellent this year. I think he's going to be mentioned among the top interior defensive linemen at the end of the season. I think he could be in line for, or at least in the conversation for defensive MOP or defensive awards. And yeah, I don't know Toya and Hendricks like that. That's a great combo there too. You mentioned Chatfield, great at getting after the passer, and not only the Canadian defensive end spot, which they haven't really had in the last few years. They haven't had, they didn't dress a Canadian starter on the defensive line
Right.
last year. That wasn't really the plan. Kongbo doesn't have to do it on his own. There's not that pressure on him because Shand is of great pedigree coming from LSU. another Canadian that can also play on the inside too. They lined him up as a tackle in the preseason, for example. So he's a guy that you can run a lot of games with, run some twists and stunts because he's got that size and strength to be able to compete in the interior. And then Ojo is just getting going athletically.
Mm,
He was really fun to watch in that second preseason game. He got a lot of time, and I'd kind of forgotten about his speed.
right.
You remember, I had these flashbacks of watching him in university. And I'm like, oh yeah, this guy can move. That's right. Where he was running after Trey Ford a couple times, and we know Trey Ford can move. And Ojo, maybe not right there with him, but it was pretty close. So they've got some great athletes on the Canadian defensive end spot. So when you combine that with what Holly can do, what Hendricks Toia can do, Johnson and Chatfield on the other side,
Right.
and we didn't even really talk about Bell. That's a player that I think probably people aren't very familiar with. Jalen Bell was in the backfield with consistency against Hamilton in the preseason. So I haven't seen enough from him yet, but he's intriguing. And so we'll keep an eye on him as he develops. And he's in a great situation learning behind
Yeah.
guys like Holly and Hendricks.
Yeah, it's a like you just kept singing the praises of this front. Like I think that's going to be a really solid front, and that's how you that's how you build a great defense starting from there. I mean, even with these linebackers, talking about them, like we haven't even talked about Darius Pickett, the party starter. How are we not
Yeah.
talking about the party starter yet? I mean, you mentioned Greg Quick and how he has that experience with linebackers. With that, just seems like a perfect match to me with Pickett, and then even with somebody like Cam Judge as well. Like it feels like both of them could have a big year with Greg Quick now and playing off that disruptive defensive line.
Yeah, Cameron Judge had to do a lot of other people's jobs last year
Right.
because they weren't getting it done up front, and it left Judge, who's an amazing athlete, but no one can do the job of multiple people, and so that's what was being asked of him. So it looked like when you watch games, you were like, yeah, maybe I didn't notice Cameron Judge as much, or I thought he might have been out of position. That really wasn't the case. It was more just that he was left with more responsibility than any one linebacker should have, and Pickett on the other side at the Sam linebacker spot. I think everybody in the CFL is very aware of Adarius Pickett. He's always in all-star conversations. I think the most interesting one is Isaac Darkangelo, and that's in our theme of today, which seems to be high floor but some questions. Isaac Darkangelo's another one of those because he hasn't been a full-time starter. That really hasn't been his role yet. He played a lot last year when Wyndham McManus was injured. But I think maybe the best vote of confidence you can look at when you're thinking about Isaac Darkangelo is the fact that I really like Aaron Casey, who was behind Darkangelo on the depth chart. I
Yeah.
believe Casey is a starting level linebacker in the
Agreed.
CFL. I think that much of him. I think that highly of him. And for the staff to release Casey, I think tells you how much faith they have in Darkangelo and how impressed they've been with him. And they offered him a great contract in the offseason, too. He's a very well paid linebacker for a guy that hasn't had a lot of starting opportunities. And it's because of what the coaching staff has seen from him. They are, from all indications, ready to give him the reins. And sort of say lead this defense. So now again, that's we have to see it still. We're gonna
Yeah.
like a lot of these things. We got to see it. We got to see the D line working together. We got to see all this stuff. Dark Angel's another one of those pieces, but yeah, extremely high ceiling. He's an extremely fast player. He hits hard. He got Argos fans' attention right away. Going back to the double blue game, I think it was a couple of years ago now, and he was the player everyone was talking about because he was the guy making hits, making plays, getting oohs and ahs from people in the stands. He's a fun player to watch. So yeah, that this front seven, I think is going to be not only much improved, but I think a very good unit among the better defensive front sevens in the CFL.
Yeah, agreed. Nearly 550 snaps for Darkangelo last season. I like them defending the run. Let's talk about that back end now in the secondary where uh, questions, again, more questions, but I feel like as there's more, you tell me if I'm wrong on this or if you feel like I got a good handle on it. I feel like we talk about there's questions across the whole roster. I feel like there's a lot more upside in terms of, the offense as a whole. You can go just quarterback specific, offensive line, just all those positions and the defensive front compared to the back end. I feel like it's going to be a bit more limited, but I like the additions that they brought in, like bringing back 𝙎𝙪𝙗𝙧𝙗𝙧𝙗 and Robert Priester to man those halfback spots. I think is an improvement. I believe that kicks Tarvarius McFadden out, who I believe has played corner before for the Argos. He's kind of bounced around inside and out. And it looks like Derek Sluka is going to be the starting safety again as well. So, talk to me about that back end. Oh, and then Benji Franklin, who I've liked at times with some size. So tell me about the back end and what you think from them.
Yeah, from corners, I'm pretty sure we'll see McFadden and Franklin on the corners. McFadden is a corner by nature, like that's what he played at Florida State. He was actually it was his sophomore season at Florida State, won the award for best uh, defensive secondary player in college football. And so
Hmm.
again, really high pedigree. He's been awesome in Toronto, and he can't actually. I like him more at halfback, but he's a very good corner. He's got
Right.
great length, and I think he pairs extremely well with Amos. Those two together. Obviously they weren't playing together last year, and I thought that you got a very different looking Tavares McFadden with different pieces, constantly coming in and out. So I really like those two players together. On the other side, Franklin had a down year. He was a very good corner the previous season, didn't
Right.
look himself last year, and I don't know what it was. Like a guy that led the league in batted balls the year before. I don't think had one until like October or something last year, where it just wasn't working out for him. And again, he's not a different player, but he kind of looked like one last year. So hoping that he can regain his form from the previous season because he was a shutdown corner going back a season. So and then Robert Priester probably going to be the boundary halfback. He's obviously very familiar with the Argos. One of the nice things they've done, you talked about, getting the band back together. The reason the band left is they got very expensive. That's what happens
Yeah.
after you win a Grey Cup. Saskatchewan's going to start seeing that as their players come up for contract at the end of this season. They've got a lot of turnaround. It's too expensive to keep them on. So you lose guys like Amos, Priester, Pickett,
Yeah.
like Hendricks, like those guys all end up leaving. But a couple of years later, you can bring them back now because they're not just coming off winning a Grey Cup, and it's the same player, the same guy. But going back to a couple of years ago, you can afford them again because they don't have that Grey Cup price tag on them, and that's just the nature of football and
Yeah.
sports in general. So yeah, I think Priester's going to feel pretty at home there. The one question mark is safety. We don't know for sure it's going to be Sluka. I think it is game
Okay.
one, but I'm not positive. He's been playing Sam linebacker all
Yes.
preseason. He looked really good there. I actually thought he looked better at Sam than he did at safety last year. And clearly, the Argos' plan was to go Canadian at safety, but the plan was twofold. They wanted to start the season with Enoch Makonzo at safety and their draft pick, Ethan John, backing him up and spending some time learning the ropes. It is extremely tough as a rookie to come into the CFL and start at safety. You just don't see it. You don't see that happen. And so they needed Makonzo to kind of weather the storm a little bit while John learned the ropes, and then eventually, maybe mid-season, maybe near the end of season, they would have had John take over, and now you've got a Canadian safety spot that you can rely on. Well, Makonzo ended up with an injury preseason. He ended up retiring, and I can only imagine his frustration. It's been year after year
Yeah.
with high expectations, and he's ended up with a season-ending injury, and so he retired, and that left Toronto in a tough spot because I don't think John's ready to go at safety yet. He will be, but I don't think he's there yet. And so they probably have to go American there to start the season. So if it's not Sluka, I think it probably is, but it could be that they end up calling up one of their practice roster players. Anthony Wilson got the start at safety. He's an American, and he got some time there in both of the first or the only two
Right.
preseason games. So that might be the answer too, depending on what they want to do.
Well, they're gonna have to figure it out because it's a group that allowed the highest opponent completion percentage, the most big plays, and the most completions of 30 plus yards last season. Clearly where they need to get better. And John is somebody I like coming out of the draft in this class. He has one of the best production and athletic profiles of the whole class. He's just small.
Yeah,
And
he's short, but so is Stavros Katsantonis, right? Like there are some short. I actually, and Katsantonis is shorter than John, right? So like height, you can still be a great safety
yeah.
without having that 6'2" frame.
I mean, he just put up like I don't know if anybody really matched the numbers that he put up in this class. And it might have been shocking to some people where he was taken in the draft, but personally to me, it made sense. Um, but overall, well, what are you going to make of this defense? Because I mentioned their woes defending the pass. We'll see how that comes. I believe they're going to be much better in terms of the stuff that the front can do. They should improve on their 41 sacks, which was fourth last season, and their 28 tackles for loss, which was fifth. I would be shocked if those numbers weren't better. But where are you going to think of this defense? How do you think they're going to play?
I think the improved pass rush is going to help the secondary. I think, it's complementary. It's like football is the biggest team sport there is. If you're great at your job but someone else isn't, it can really impact your play. We talked about that when I was talking about Cameron Judge. But I think with corners and halfback safeties, if you don't have a pass rush, it's not going to help you at all. And in fact, it's going to make you look like a pretty bad defender. I remember asking Shaq Richardson a few years ago, I was talking to him about the importance of D line. And he's like, my favorite player on the defense is always the edge rusher or a penetrating three tech. Whoever gets to the quarterback, that's my favorite player on defense because that's what leads to my interceptions, my pass breakups, my coverage plays come from only giving the quarterback 2 seconds to throw that football. And so if Toronto can get the pass rush we think they're going to be able to get, then I think these defensive secondary players are going to have a big season. If it's like last year though, and this doesn't work out and they're not able to impact the quarterback, then yeah, of course there are going to be holes that appear on the defensive side of the ball. So there are unanswered questions, and like we said, that's the theme today. But yeah, the ceiling is very high, but I think it starts with that defensive line, and that is by far the biggest overhaul in this whole team from last year to this year, a position of weakness that they've turned into a position of strength.
Yeah, they also allowed the second most rush yards per game too, and
Yeah.
the fourth most average yards per carry. And those guys should help. Even like a Darius Pickett, who's one of the best run defenders from the nickel position, should help in that aspect as well. Well, I think that's about everything, Ben. I guess we could touch on the special teams if there was any notes that you wanted to pass along. But I mean, feel free for any last words. Tell the people where they can find you, and yeah, it seems like we're a bit higher. This has been a very positive Argos chat. So I guess we'll see where I gotta sit down and do my standings predictions, but I feel like there's a lot of parity, so it's gonna be tough to really decipher these out.
Yeah, it's tough, and like the Argos, just quickly on special teams, like Janarian Grant obviously is your
Right.
primary returner. He's got he's done some things. Lahu obviously record-setting field goal kicker. John Haggerty back as the punter, and Adam Guillemette, my favorite long snapper in the league. I think he's a real
It's
asset
one of
to
the
this
best
team.
groups in the league, to be honest. One
It
of the
is,
best units.
yeah, those guys are great. And so yeah, but again, there are questions, so we'll have to see, and that's why you're going to see like predictions are going to range. Like you could, it would, I don't think it would shock that many people if just everything clicked and suddenly the Argos are a 12-win team or what have you. But I also don't think it would shock a lot of people if the road was just too much to overcome, and maybe some of the projections that I've talked about today didn't work out. Guys didn't click the way you thought they would, or maybe the staff didn't gel with the players the way that I think they will. So it can go anywhere. I think that's not just the Argos story this year, but you're going to have similar questions when you look at a lot of teams in the league. But I
Yeah.
love that. That's my favorite kind of CFL when you just don't know. Anyone in the East could win this division this year. And I think it's been a long time since we've been able to say that. But it's not like the West is easy to decipher either. I have
No.
no idea who's going to be there at the end. And I love that. I think that's one of the best things going for the CFL.
It's gonna be fun. Excitement is high. We're right around the corner, so feel free to keep checking in on the channel. We're gonna try to doing content all season. Check out Ben's stuff if you're here for the Argos. Obviously, there's a reason why we brought him on the prestigious channel because there's no one else I'd rather chat Argos with. So, Ben, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, man.
Anytime. Love doing it.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for watching and thanks for sticking around. Have a good one.